Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in again. I am your host, Chris Shang. As always, we are keeping the sass and sassy, and today we're joined by Olga Mack, a world-renowned author, as well as a TED Talk speaker. We're going to talk about her experience as a CEO of Parley Pro, and also her passion for the law and her background in crypto before it became this crazy thing that we see now.
Pod Sass, where we're putting the sass back in sassy. Sponsored by LeadrPro, where you can book demos with target customers on demand and fill your sales pipeline instantly.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us today on PodSass. Today we have Olga Mack. Is that how you pronounce the last name? It seems pretty straightforward, but I just want to make sure that that's the case. Olga
It is
Mack?
straightforward.
Okay, and she's coming to us from Parley Pro. Unique situation where she was not a founder, but she is actually currently the CEO. So we'll dive into that story today. But yeah, Olga, if you could tell us a little bit about like just an elevator pitch of what Parley Pro is, and then who the target audience is, your target customers.
Absolutely. Chris, it's great to be here. Thank you for extending me an invitation. I am CEO of Parley Pro. I'm not a founder. I've been on my job for about 2 years. Parley Pro is a contract lifecycle management platform. We help every stage of the contracts, from creation to negotiation to signature to post-signature management. We serve the entire organization. We help people to have a relationship with the contract that is appropriate to their function and appropriate to the stage of contract. We are optimized and we sell to in-house legal department that may be lawyers or that may be other legal professionals.
To kick things off, we like to go into like a rapid fire series of just 10 quick questions, a little bit random, but it's a good way to kind of like break the ice, get to know you a little bit, faster. So if you're all good with that, we'll just jump into it if that's cool with you.
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. So you've had a pretty extensive background with startups. Do you have a favorite entrepreneur?
So many. I have so many crushes. My current one is the founder of OpenSea. I really like what he's doing and how successfully I've discovered NFTs, before they were cool. And it's been really interesting to see how he's taking this technology mainstream and making it an acquired taste. And their recent success is very, very inspiring.
It's a company that's been around for what, like 3, 4, 5 years now, right? And it's just only now picking up a lot of steam.
Quite a lot of steam for a technology that is yet to be mainstream or entirely proven.
Takes me to my next question. What's the best piece of advice that you have been given?
The best piece of advice came from my father when we immigrated to the United States when I was 12. He took me to my high school at some point and asked me to go to a counselor and ask for my schedule. I looked him in the eye and I said, I do not speak English. How do you expect me to do that? He basically said, Olga, people who want to understand will understand you no matter what language you speak. It is a desire to connect and understand. That's what's needed. And so I always look for that when I talk to people.
That's a good piece of advice. What motivates you in the 25th hour? Like working for an early stage company, coming in as a CEO, right? Like there's still a lot of nuances, still a lot of blockers to running a successful company that can operate day in and day out, pay the bills, all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure you've run into a lot of different types of obstacles. Anything particular that you go to that motivates you?
I serve the needs of legal industry. I've been on the intersection of technology, business, and law my entire career. And the reason for that is because I fundamentally believe, one, in the rule of law, and two, in its importance in civil society. And the reason for that is because I had an opportunity to grow up where the rule of law did not matter nearly as much, and I know the difference. Having grown up in the United States, I see that technology very much accelerates at a much greater speed than the evolution of law. And I see that we increasingly have a dysfunctional relationship with law, specifically in our case with contracts. And I see it as a threat to our society and our well-being and us as humans. And so when I get up in the morning, I'm really excited to make sure that we as professionals, as humans, and as society have a very proper relationship with law where we understand where we're going and what we're dealing with.
What did you want to be as a kid?
My parents are engineers. The first thing I wanted to be was an artist. and they found a way to be supportive. When I immigrated to United States, I decided, and I found myself in the middle of Silicon Valley and saw how technology changed my past, my community, and the opportunities in front of me. I wanted to become an engineer. Quickly discovered that I really love humans much more. And through various paths, decided to go to law because as someone who interpreted various legal documents to my community and my family, and somebody who understood the power of law as an immigrant, I also saw that law is not quite catching up with technology. And so I saw the need for privacy and security growing up in the early days of internet. And so the reason I went to law school is because I wanted to be basically tech lawyer by design. And that meant I studied intellectual property, security, and privacy. All of those issues have become big issues in my lifetime, and I had an opportunity to grow with those issues as a professional.
This is typically, revolves around, just like early stage companies, it tends to require, a little bit of a different of a lifestyle shift. I feel like, I don't know if that's something you've encountered, but have you had to balance at all, being an executive at a young company still, and then balancing that with your personal life or family life?
Yes, although I've been at so many startups at this point, I've been at earlier stage startups. I've been at later stage startups. I tried to take one public. I've sold one. I've been in the early days of crypto in company that just had an ICO, a very small company, even smaller than Parley Pro. I am what people would describe as a risk preferring lawyer. I love risk and I like turbulence, and in fact I feel very uncomfortable when things are just stable because I think the storm is coming. So having said that, I'm also a mother of two children. They're 10 and 12, and with most of my startup adventures, I've had quite a lot of help from my family and from my immediate family and from my remote family, and I'm really grateful for that. And that's an adjustment and a choice I've made as someone who really enjoys being on the cutting edge of technology. Ironically enough, pandemic actually made it better because I actually now see my kids much more often, and putting them to bed is something I haven't been able to do in the first 7 years of their lives.
That being said, would you want your kids to be entrepreneurs?
I would like my kids to live their full potential. And if that means they're going to be entrepreneurs and that's how they're going to contribute to make this world a better place, and so be it. And if they choose to do something else, I'm very much supportive. That's their choice.
Last question. What would you like your legacy to be?
I would like my legacy to be as a person who changed our dysfunctional relationship with law, where we accepted blindly agreeing and saying allow, I agree, click, 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 without knowing what it is, to going into every situation with eyes fully open, and where transparency as opposed to opaqueness is the norm. I think we're all capable when right information is presented to us at the right time in a way that is digestible to a normal human, to understand what's going on and make decisions that are good for us. And it is my hope that we stop accepting law as a black box and really start having a more functional, more sustainable relationship with law, whether it comes from private companies or government.
So that's it on the rapid fire questions. But I am very, very curious as to where your origination with this passion for law stems from. Number one, and I do think it's super, super relevant when you're talking and giving that last explanation around our relationship with law, right? I feel like, a lot of times it's very common as a consumer. I experience this all the time where you're clicking agree to a lot of different things and you have no idea what you're agreeing to. I think what's starting to come to the forefront, with the idea of cookies being tracked and all this now coming, where people are now being aware that a lot of their digital activity, also physical activity, is actually being tracked. And there's these privacy concerns, but I still don't think it's in a way where, the layman consumer actually understands like how that works, let alone, what am I accepting to or not allowing and all that kind of stuff. I know even though I'm in the tech field, like sometimes it does get confusing. Like if it says do not allow or it says allow, and when you click do not allow, it's all of a sudden takes you to another thing where it makes it very difficult ultimately for you to like not get tracked, right? And they create a lot of layers of friction for you to opt out of these things. So that being said, I think that's making the law more digestible to the general public, I think it's a worthwhile endeavor and mission where I think a lot of people need to understand that.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned the example of accepting terms and conditions or cookies or privacy policy, because we all, kind of at some point had a moment where we realized we're just mindlessly clicking yes to whatever, yes, just give me the service, yes, please. We all, have enough self-reflection to understand that that's what's happening. And we have, as a society, we've normalized that behavior. We don't question doing this. There's a study there's one in university in Canada and one university in the United States, where students were clicking through, and if you read the terms and conditions, they basically gave away a lot of things, including their firstborn. Nobody read this. I don't read this. So there's a real danger in that, but there's so much more than that. If you are, for example, in an abusive relationship and you want to get a restraining order, where are you going to go? You're going to go to a search engine. You're going to put something in the search, and it's very likely that you're not even going to get a relevant search. It's very likely that you're not going to get an address of the clinic in your neighborhood. You may not even get a relevant law in your particular jurisdiction. If you are about to get married and you're searching for an engagement ring, you're going to get a lot of choices about the size of the diamond and how much you should be spending, but nowhere will there be any information around prenup. And the decision about prenup is right there. That's when you make that decision, when you like engaging in an engagement ring decision, right? And it's a very important decision, because not only it may protect you from your spouse, it may also protect you from your creditors. So search is an equivalent of a town square in the good old days, right? That's where the information should be accessible, available, and digestible. Yet we serve all kinds of stuff about rings, and we serve absolutely no information around other things that we should be considering at that time. So those are just examples that law is just not, it's more than just we're mindlessly clicking. Law is not available to serve when it's needed, in the place where it should be served, in the way that a normal person would understand.
Yeah, that's a great metaphor. I think that's that clicked for me, at least, for sure. Yeah, how did you get involved in law, and how did you become so passionate about it?
I was born in Ukraine, grew up in Russia, and during the turbulence of the Soviet falling apart, and everyone knows that the rule of law there is not nearly as respected as it is in the United States. Having immigrated to the United States, I saw the difference and the impact that has on the opportunities in the way of life. Just sort of as a general observation, but more specifically, as my family was going through various sort of turbulence of immigration, I was the person who was reading and English. I was presented with a lot of legal forms. I was essentially interpreting all those forms, from immigration forms to various contracts to, from with AT&T and with their employers. And, and at the time I was like, I just don't speak English. And so, and I was trying to kind of wrap my head around that. And then I went to law school, and and if it was a law degree, I would read this and it would be, I understood it better, but it was still, even with a law degree, I felt like a lot of it, like I didn't really fully understand, at least not enough to really do a tutorial for my family. So I through that really slow process, I realized that one, law is important, and it really, and having a law that serves is important for us as humans and for us as society. And then I thought it was me not speaking English, but then it was under me. It wasn't. And then I realized it wasn't me. It was the law that was broken.
It's just legalese in general is very much its own language for anybody from the.
Yeah, and then I was the in-house lawyer at numerous companies, and the number one question, like anyone would ask me, is when does this contract expire and what are the basic terms? So to me, that means a normal human cannot open this black and white piece of prose and tell me what's in it. Period. Right? And that's the basic information. This is not information, will I be sued, or what is the jurisdiction? This is the basic information, what's in my contract and why. If you don't know that, your relationship with your contract is broken. Because that you should know that information. And so that's, given this is the number one question I'm asked, like what is the expiration date, what happens when it does, who, what are the parameters of my contract? If you have a contract that impacts your life and you cannot answer those basic questions, you don't have a contract that serves you, period. You don't need you should not need a lawyer to know what's in your contract. Business speaking, legally speaking, that's maybe different, but business terms, you should know. And if you don't, your contract is not the right contract.
So what I'm hearing is like you were at when you moved here, you're what you said 13, 14?
I was, 12, 13, yes.
So almost like you picked up being the family attorney from like 13 to 14 years old, and it evolved over this period of time as you got older into your late teens and early 20s, and then going through college and then going get your law degree. It seems like it stemmed from this kind of like experience of immigrating to the United States and then almost being like a family attorney for all these legal documentations as part of that process. And then you seeing the problem in and of itself, where it's like, it's not the fact that English is a second language. It's like law is a second language, and it's a second language for a lot of, Americans, right? So that's very interesting. I think it's something that I see and I definitely encounter as somebody who's not in the legal space, to be able to interpret, business, just even business documents, which is kind of crazy. But how do you see then, what are you doing? And maybe this is part of what Parley Pro is doing now, for businesses, but like being able to translate a lot of these, it's very complex or language, or it's, very almost like robotic type of language. It's its own language, to then translate it into a way where somebody who's not familiar with the way that you structure this kind of these sentences into something that's more digestible.
One thing to realize that different people have different relationship with contract depending on their stage, right? Yeah. It is true that lawyers will read the contract from the beginning to end. It is also true that other professionals only read a paragraph or a sentence. And so we allow you to kind of zero in and out depending on kind of who you are, and have a different relationship with the contract depending on a stage. And I think that's sort of very, very important. There's sort of a larger move, and the reason I got really excited to join Parley Pro is one, because it solves one of many problems in law. But there is sort of finally, I've been in SaaS before it was cool, in data before it was cool, AI before it was cool, blockchain, crypto before it was cool. But the one thing that I was missing, like law has been actually pretty static. And I feel very fortunate that in my lifetime, there's enough recognition that we actually need to be doing things about this thing called law. And so there's enough momentum, and there's quite a lot of people doing a lot of things in this industry that's been lagging behind. And so I feel part of that movement of creating sort of transparency and more appropriate relationship where people understand and law is simplified and digested and automated for folks to really make informed decisions and make those right decisions before they experience consequences. And so I predict there will be quite a lot of innovation. And when I went to law school, I was talking to one of the deans, and he said, law is this like a 1,000-year path. And if you want to succeed in it, you just kind of need to follow it. after, that speech, approached him and I said, hey, if I'm like not into this following thing, and I go left or right, what happens? And he laughed. He said, well, you may get shot. Ha ha ha. I am fortunate, and I think he was joking. But I'm fortunate to live during the time when the technology and social pressures are such that we now are exploring left and right. And so we'll see this field to change in our lifetime. And I'm really excited to be part of that because, I knew that this needs to change, and we now know that we do. And so it's really exciting to become not a weirdo during your lifetime, but go from that to a normal person who has different expectations and actually builds different solutions to serve the interests of the public.
No, I mean, when you say that, the first things that came to mind too was, like Travis Kalanick from, Uber, and people like, Brian Chesky with Airbnb, where, these are consumer products that I don't think a lot of people were aware that, like, Travis actually went and spent time in jail, when he first launched Uber, because he was essentially breaking the law in San Francisco, right? And with Airbnb, we've seen this a lot of the times where, the jurisdictions of where Airbnb, people who have Airbnbs and where they're operating is being challenged by local law and all that kind of stuff. And it is where you're seeing this intersection between tech meeting law, finding a better way to do things, but you have antiquated laws in place, and then having to challenge those systems, right? What are your thoughts on, what are your thoughts about that, in terms of like, is there one horse that should be leading the other, or is it kind of like, we should always kind of be challenging on both sides of the spectrum, to continue to innovate and think in the context of like the general audience and the general population, and doing things better and serving them.
Full disclosure, I consider myself a technologist first. So I don't think law should lead. I think law should be supportive and transparent and be of service. Because clear laws, predictability is what really encourages commerce and innovation in the end of the day. So I think the technology and business and doing the right thing, those should be our kind of guiding posts. And I think to some extent, it's okay for law to be maybe a little behind, because frankly, we have quite a lot of laws that, that make the basic things that are bad illegal. Like independent of technology, you can't defraud people. Period. There's quite a lot of laws about this, even if they're not specific to technology. And frankly, we don't need law specific to technology to outlaw, like what is clearly bad behavior. And there is a danger in having laws that kind of over-regulate the industry that is like still immature and developing, and it's not clear. It actually could stifle innovation. But at some point, it becomes very clear that law is not of service and doesn't help. And I think it's a fundamental tenet of law and access to justice that transparency, predictability, and being of service needs to be there. And if we're mindlessly clicking through the terms of condition, like law is not of service in the end of the day. And if we're making decisions and don't even realize that they're legal decisions, from deciding to get married to, for example, driving across state lines and not realizing different DUI limits because we just don't know, then that failure to know and being informed in the age where information is freely available and should be served to you because there's an app for that just about everything, that's when the failure of law happens. It fails to make you someone who makes informed choices and makes you stupid. And law should not, the access to law and ability to understand it and do the right thing should not correlate with money, because there's something really fundamental about law. So, I don't think law should lead. I don't think law should be far behind. And most importantly, I think law should be of service. It should be predictable. It should be transparent. You should appreciate situations that are legal. And you should make decisions that are right for you. And in my experience, most people who are informed do what's good for them and for society, because we tend to want to do the right thing, just kind of generally speaking.
This may be a little bit of a tangent, but it's something that I think would you have a lot of domain expertise in, so I'm going to ask it. But this idea of the metaverse, and to me, it's a little bit scary because you're opening up this digital world where, I think it's being pumped up by a lot of really smart people, a lot of money that's going into it, but at the same time, idealists, right? And the other side of that spectrum, there are, bad people too that go online and do bad things. And, if you're creating this world almost with like very limited legal understanding or laws in place, in my mind, I'm thinking like, okay, well, when is the first instance of like a digital trauma experience going to happen, right? Like, and what happens in those instances? Because at a certain point, our bodies or our minds, more specifically, are going to have harder delineations of understanding what's reality versus not. And I think we see this already through just social media and the instances with children, or teenage girls specifically. In the case of Instagram, like, having real life implications from a digital experience. And I don't know what your thoughts personally are on that, but like, how do you monitor or how do you police or institute any kind of law in these digital worlds?
In this lawless digital world.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, no, it's a really, it's a really good question. Let me just say, look, whose jurisdiction? Like, laws are very jurisdictional, right? They're
Exactly.
very geography driven. United States laws or California laws applied in California. So now we're talking about metaverse. So the basic question before we even talk about laws, like, whose jurisdiction it is, and how do you know? Is it based on the participant citizenship or something else? Again, remember, I'm a technologist first. Like, I think it's I'm not even a gamer, and frankly, yes, I'm a millennial, but I'm like almost a Gen Xer, so like I'm on that cusp. So like, I don't think I'll get to the point that my life will be more than 50% in metaverse ever. Like, I very much care about sort of physical reality, the way I show up in this world physically. Although I have various what you call digital twins online. Like, you went to my LinkedIn, like, it's a very robust twin of Olga, online that has a presence and people feel real and people connect to, especially in my industry. So look, I think this technology is very exciting. If the question is, do I think it's sort of gonna go away? No, I don't think it will go away. I think even today, there's a lot of people who having, digital twins effectively and making a living through that. I can tell you, like, if you take my LinkedIn profile, that will severely impact my ability to make it in this world, even though it's not metaverse. So what your online, what people call brand, I old school call reputation, matters, period. And that move toward more online presence in a digitally native economy makes sense. It only makes sense. It's a natural progression. And I think you correctly observed it, as anything new, it comes with a lot of unknowns and risks and challenges. And yes, metaverse is going to be fundamentally challenging the premise of law, that laws are jurisdiction based. That is a fundamental law. Like you cross the border from the United States to Canada, United States law do not apply. United States for law enforcement cannot arrest you there unless under very limited circumstances. And Metaverse kind of put questions that, like, to what extent civil society is jurisdiction specific. And so it's going to be very interesting. And you're absolutely right. We've seen all, one of the reasons Web3 and Metaverse are closely tied. They're not the same thing, but they are closely tied. And the reason they are, we see Web3 is because we have seen all these problems with privacy and security and data in Web2, right? So that's the answer is Web3. But then Web3 has its own set of challenges. And so my answer to that, we are fortunate enough to live in the universe and live in a time where we could be part of building. If you worry about Metaverse and you worry about Web3, as you should, then it's time for you to get off the sideline, roll up your sleeve, and start building. Right? Like then you're going to be part of the solution. Worrying on the sidelines will lead you to maybe a therapist. But if you actually want to do something about it, then roll up your sleeves and start building the world that you want your children to grow up. It's not that complicated. I mean, that's the reason why startups, for me, why I'm excited, is because I think that's a very constructive answer to the question of, I think there's something wrong with the world today. And then that's a constructive answer to, I can do something different. Maybe my impact is not going to be from A to Z. My impact could be from A to B, and I will inspire all those other people to do more. Because in the end, a big change actually requires a lot of people doing a lot of things.
And that's why I brought it up. I don't know. I don't know the answer either. You know, I feel like there's a big unknown quantity in what this is. It's obviously a lot of hype right now behind it. I don't think it's going away either. I think, you know, it's interesting. I am also on the tail end of a millennial, and you know, I don't know if I would want my friends' kids in it, or my nieces or nephews, you know, running around in that right now. You know, so.
but also you can kind of have a thought exercise. You know, I wrote a book called Blockchain Value, where I was kind of thinking through, the moment that I decided to write the book is because I found myself in 2017 part of this underground movement that is now known as NFTs. And I talked to this bunch of kids. You know, I was literally the oldest person in the room, and I was not even close to 40 at the time. And then they were explaining what's possible, and my mind was spinning. And I imagined all the impact it will have on business, how we transact, and what is possible. And I got super excited, and I decided to write a book about that. And, you know, I find this very helpful with new technology. You know, you can kind of choose to, like, what could possibly go wrong, and the answer to that is pretty much anything and everything. Or you can kind of think about, well, what tools does it give us to solve the problems that we haven't been able to solve in the past? You know, what business models that will be open to us, and who is gonna be included in this economy, who wasn't before. I think I think the framing of the question is highly correlated with what kind of answer you're gonna get. And so I think it's important to ask what could go wrong, absolutely. But I also think, especially in the beginning, I actually should, as equally importantly, ask what could possibly go right, and why is this a good thing, and what tools are we going to have in our toolbox to solve problems that we thought, you know, are impossible to solve. And the promise of Web3 is, you know, at least in rhetoric, is actually quite exciting. You know, a lot of it has to do with inclusion and kind of being part of the economy and being rewarded for your efforts as opposed to your titles. You know, if you don't think that's cool, you know, I don't know what is.
Yeah, no, that is very. I get the pro side. I think we hear a lot. You know, at least like a lot more about the pro side too. I tend to think too. It's like there is just, you know, provoking the other side of the coin too at the same time. Is like it's important to ask those questions as well. You know,
absolutely right. And as when we start adulting more intentionally because we have children, right? Because I like my 10 and 12-year-olds are much more in tune about their digital presence. But they, you know, I have two girls, they're avid gamers. They very much care about their avatars and what they show up and what that looks like. Actually, they care more about that than the clothes, they buy. And to me, I can't relate to that. So my kids are growing up with a very different values, and what's important to them. They put more value on digital objects that I could ever do.
That was very super helpful. And, I wanted to dive into, a little bit of a shift towards, you have this tremendous background across working with a lot of different types of startups. It looks like you've you've done TED Talks, you've been in the legal world. How did you end up becoming involved in Parley Pro? Like, knowing also that Parley Pro, I feel like it's a woman-led organization, right? Female founders. And how did you get incorporated with them, or how did you get involved with that from the onset?
Yeah, so the two founders, the former CEO is a woman, The CTO is a man, so it's what I call an equal opportunity organization. The founders have done a fantastic job building state-of-the-art technology in the first 5 years. And other than polishing it since I've joined, I can't take a credit for that. That is what they did. Legal is a very challenging field, and they are technologists and business professionals. They had it from the day one. They knew that they will need to kind of augment the team one way or another. The former CEO will tell you a story that she contacted me on the year 1 or 2. She will also tell you a story that I never responded. I will tell you a story that she might have written to a girl named Olga, but it wasn't this Olga. Because I tend to be really excited about startups. I've been mentoring, advising all kinds of startups for now a long time. Many of them had exits, many of them didn't. I love startups. And more importantly, the reason she was getting in touch with me is because as I was going through my, tech lawyer career, I sort of care about the future of law and have written quite a lot and spoken about it. Before pandemic, I was speaking 3 to 5 times a week about this topic to all kinds of audiences and done quite a few things. So, and I believe that the future of law in-house is very important because I've seen the rise of in-house lawyers away from law firms in my lifetime. And this is something, I deeply cared about since I almost right away when I graduated from law school. It was not part of my job. I was having these conversations, doing like 2 columns a week for no other reason because other than I love it. Basically I was doing what I'm paid to do today for free for about 15 years before I got to be paid for it. And it was, I tell my husband that was my mistress on the side, because my job gave me a lot of things, but it didn't give me everything. And instead of quitting my job, I got a mistress on the side. And so that hobby and that kind of exposure and notoriety and conversations with in-house lawyers and kind of putting out content in different platforms, before sort of, the term influencer was coined or, I was doing for a long time. And that's why, they approached me on the year 5. The founder was reluctant to approach me, and then she asked the investors to approach me. And at the time, they realized that now that they built this product, they really should be making sure that the rest of the industry knows about it. And that somebody like myself would be helpful. And that's when I heard from the investors. And as you know, when investors ask you to have lunch, you don't usually say no. So I said yes to that. And they asked me if I ever thought about being the CEO. My answer to that, I know exactly how to do that. You drive to Sacramento, you incorporate Olga Inc., and voila, I'm the CEO. So I know how to do that. And they said, no, it's a real company. And I said, please don't tell me it's a legal tech company. And the reason I'm skeptical, because historically legal tech has been really tough and resistant to change, and investors have been actually frankly biased against it. I've advised many projects, they compared to non-legal tech projects, they have been really hard. As an industry, very hard industry. So I was very skeptical. So as a favor to investors, I met with the founders and I saw the product. And before I joined, we talked for about 6 months. For me, it wasn't an easy sort of yes, happy to join. I was a very happy lawyer, and I was doing my part as someone who was speaking to the industry, advocating for various changes, very passionate about it, and I had a lot of impact. I got to the point where I asked myself, do I want to keep talking or do I want to start building? And I think that's a pivotal moment in if you want to have an impact. Talking and writing is a lot of work and hard, but doing and building in a hard industry in uncertain circumstances. I've become a CEO, the first time CEO, right after pandemic hit. So not only did I not think I would be a CEO ever in my entire life, I would have never wished for myself to be one during the biggest pandemic of modern history. So, and what really makes it all possible is and exciting and it is still very much an early stage startup, is the fact that in my mind, I'm building the future of law. That is the exciting part. I deeply care about it, and I think contracts is just a big, massive opportunity in that future of law thing.
And it's a great foot in the door too, because I feel like there's so many things beyond that, that speaks to what you're doing, which is being able to, I think, translate a lot of these legal documentations into a way that more universal teams can understand.
Right.
Absolutely. So on that note, I think we'll wrap things up. I think it was really very insightful for me, at least personally, to get a little bit more understanding about your background, but also your introspections around the law. And I think it makes me think, at least, and I'm sure it'll make a lot of these other listeners think as well, around their interactions with the law, which, if anything, I feel like that's a huge accomplishment, to be able to provoke ideas or provoke people to start thinking in a different way. This is something that you definitely did with me today. So I just want to say,
yeah, I mean, it actually, on that note, I'm sorry to interrupt you. When I was in high school, and I was able to read and write English fairly quickly, but speaking, I didn't really speak until I graduated from college. So when people would approach me and ask me, Olga, what do you want to be when you grow up? I have this thing where I like saying crazy things and see people reaction and struggle. And so I would tell them I would like to be a lawyer. And we all know that to be a lawyer in the United States, you need to have a full command of English. And nobody wants to tell a high schooler that she can't be what she wants to be. But people kind of struggle when someone who doesn't speak English tells them that. And they don't know what to tell. Should they give you a reality check? Should they tell you not to do that? Or should they just yeah, be one? And it was very interesting. And so when I told my parents that I'm going to law school and I have this reservation, and I told them, and I have a very close relationship with both of my parents, especially my dad. And I said, the problem is most people cannot imagine a girl named Olga whose English is her second language to be their lawyer. And he said, what do you mean by that? And I said, imagine you have the crappiest problem, I don't know, big tax law, big employment issue, big injury. Close your eyes. And now imagine your lawyer. And I guarantee it's not going to be a girl named Olga. and he sort of turned around and he said, yeah, but that's because most people have an imagination problem. And I think that's kind of the thing, imagining a slightly different place is a very important start. It's because we can't imagine, we are reliving the same crappy experience of clicking I allow, I agree, because we can't even imagine a different world. But if you start, and even though we all have an introspection, every time I mention this, every person will give me a terms and condition example. So we all collectively know this is broken, but the problem we're not doing anything about is because we can't imagine different. And if we can, because the day we imagine different is the day we start solving it.
All right, I'm gonna extend it a little bit because it's something there where you're talking about this before. I didn't say anything because I felt like it's too much of a distraction or going off on a tangent. But when you're saying crossing interstate lines where the DUI laws are different, right? I think people can understand or relate to, okay, I'm gonna cross state lines, there's gonna be different laws. It would be great to have, an AI vehicle then tell you, right, you're crossing state lines, these are the differences in laws.
Let me give you a few more examples.
Yeah.
You have a device in you that knows that you're in the bar. It knows where you are and what you like there is given the time of the day. It knows it's happy hour and you're about to have a shot or two or five, right? So there should be an app that tells you about the limit.
Turn on your locations, tells you exactly what you're doing.
Yeah. You also, for example, you're driving on the highway. You have a routine traffic stop. Your device knows that you're in the middle of a highway. There's possibly two things that could probably happen. You either have an emergency, like your tire blew off, or you have a traffic stop, right? So this part where, a cop tells you, I have reasons to believe that you have illegal stuff in your trunk. May I take a look? Most people don't know what to do here. Should they open it? Right? But there could be an app that tells you, hey, you likely have a traffic stop. Your cop could say this. Here are your options. If you are not arrested, that means you're free to leave and you don't have to consent to search, no matter how nicely they ask you. But most of us have no idea. And your device knows that you're stopped, and your device knows where you are. That delivery, that should be there. Like, you should not be, what is the law? Can I lie to him? Can he lie to me? Do I have to open my trunk? Like, most of us don't know the answer to this question. It's in the jurisdiction. And so we have enough devices that have data about our location, time of the day, all kinds of things. And the probabilities are that if you're in the bar, you're drinking, and if you're stopping on the freeway, there's one or two things happen. So there's an opportunity of when, where, and how to deliver that information to you at that time.
That's another discussion, I feel like.
You will never have the same traffic stop again.
No, exactly, 100%. And I that's so relatable to so many people. And I think that's a great entry point to kind of, again, like the technology that you're talking about, that intersect between law and technology. So anyways, again, don't want to take up too much of your time. We're wrapping up on the hour here. And again, I think it just, a lot of food for thought, especially around your background. And so wanted to say thank you, Olga, again for participating today. And I just wanted to say thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for having me on the show. It's been a blast.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode today with Olga Mack. We got to learn a lot about her passion for the law and how she's making changes through Parley Pro. If you like this episode, please subscribe below. And always, please give us 5-star reviews, because we love them 5-star reviews.